You want me to go home and practice dying, Vaeloria said, and her voice sounded steadier than her hands. The doctor kept his gaze on the folder, as if paper could shield him from her. I want you to go home and be with people who love you. The mass is aggressive. Treatment could slow it, but it will not cure it. So you are selling me a softer ending. I am trying to give you time. Time for what? For strangers to pat my shoulder while my body turns into a calendar. He finally looked up. I am sorry. Do not say that like it is a blessing. Vaeloria stood, the chair legs scraping like a scream against the tiled floor. If I am going to die, I will choose where. I will choose how. Outside the clinic, the city moved with its usual cruelty, traffic and laughter, and people carrying groceries for dinners they assumed would happen next week. Vaeloria walked until her lungs burned, until the cold sharpened her thoughts into something dangerous. She stopped under a pane of mirrored glass and stared at herself, at the careful coat, the careful hair, the eyes that had always calculated risk and now could not calculate her own future. Not yet. The words landed inside her skull, not heard but felt, like a fingertip pressing against the center of her forehead. Vaeloria spun. No one stood close enough to have spoken. There was only the wind and the impatient rush of strangers. Not yet, the voice repeated, and this time it carried a strange cadence, elegant and old. You are not finished. I am losing my mind, Vaeloria whispered. No, the voice said, you are being offered a door. She laughed once harsh. A door into what? A better hospital. Into a different death, the voice replied, or a different life. That night she did not cry. She resigned by email, neat and professional. She sold furniture she had chosen to impress people who would forget her. She deleted apps she no longer needed. Each act felt like stripping weight off a sinking body. When dawn came, she drove north to the countryside croft her grandmother had left behind, a place Vaeloria had not stepped into since the funeral, as if memory might be contagious. The house waited between pines and river, roof furred with moss, windows filmed with dust. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and paper, and the silence was too heavy to be empty. Vaeloria set her bags down and began cleaning, because movement was easier than thinking. She scrubbed, swept, opened curtains, found the cracked kettle, found a jar of dried herbs that still held scent. In the attic, she found a trunk she did not remember. The lock hung open as if it had been expecting her. Inside lay folded fabric, a leather journal with pages too brittle to risk, and an oval mirror wrapped in velvet. The mirror was wrong in a way she could not explain. The frame was carved with thorn-like symbols. The glass looked darker than glass should look, as if it reflected not light but distance. When Vaeloria lifted it, the metal stole heat from her palm. Put it down. The warning came in her grandmother's voice, so clear Vaeloria's throat tightened. Grandma. Not your grandmother, the other voice whispered, suddenly intimate. Mine. The attic light flickered. Vaeloria stared into the mirror, and for a heartbeat the reflection was not her own. A pale woman stared back, hair like ink, eyes like bruises, mouth curved with the memory of cruelty. Vaeloria dropped the mirror. It struck the floor and did not shatter. It rang, a deep, ringing note that vibrated through the beams. You found it, the voice said, and it sounded almost relieved. I have waited so long. Vaeloria backed away until her calf hit the trunk. What are you? A name, the voice answered. A bloodline, Zyraeth Noctvelin. The name made the attic feel smaller, as if the air had pulled tight around it. Outside, thunder muttered, distant but waking. This is impossible, Vaeloria said, and the denial tasted weak. Everything is possible when you have one foot in the grave, Zyraeth replied. That is when the worlds loosen. Downstairs, the wind rose fast. The river hissed. Vaeloria carried the mirror into the kitchen like it might bite if she left it alone. She lit a candle and watched its flame bend sideways as the house exhaled. I died in my castle, Zyraeth said inside her head, voice smooth as a blade. The last of my line. I refused to let my gift rot with my bones, so I cast for someone who would not beg to be saved. Vaeloria gripped the mirror tighter. You cannot be real. I am real enough to feel your fear, Zyraeth murmured. You are dying, Vaeloria Quillstar. Your world has already started to let you go. Say you refuse. Say you will lie down and wait for your cells to fail. Lightning cracked so close the windows shook. The candle guttered. The mirror warmed, not like metal near heat, but like skin. Vaeloria felt a pull behind her ribs, a hooked sensation dragging her toward the dark surface. Stop, she hissed. Say you are afraid, Zyraeth said, and the words threaded through Vaeloria's mind like fingers. Admit you want to live. Vaeloria's anger flared, hot and humiliating. Do not talk to me like you own my fear. Then prove you own it, Zyraeth whispered. Step through. The mirror flared with darkness, so deep it became a kind of light. Cold pain spiked across Vaeloria's chest, and she understood, with sudden clarity, that refusing would be another kind of surrender. Fine, she breathed, fine. If I die, at least it will not be quietly. The storm swallowed her. She woke on wet leaves, gagging on air as if she had been drowned. Pine scent filled her lungs. A small fire flickered nearby, sheltered under rock. Above, unfamiliar stars crowded the sky, bright and sharp as needles. Vaeloria pushed herself up and froze. Her body moved wrong, too easy, too strong. She pressed her hands to her face. The skin was smooth, the fingers slender, without the little scars she remembered. She looked down at her legs, at a rough tunic and cloak instead of her coat, at boots that had never touched a city sidewalk. Across the fire sat a woman, half shadow, half smoke. She looked like the mirror's reflection made solid, yet her edges wavered, as if she did not fully belong to the air. "You did this," Vaeloria rasped. "We did this," Zyraeth replied, calm and unashamed. "You crossed. I anchored. Now breathe before you panic yourself into a heart attack." "I am not 18, Vaeloria said, and the disbelief cracked her voice. "Your body is," Zyraeth said. "Your illness is gone. Your years are returned. Consider it a trade." "A trade for what?" "For me," Zyraeth answered softly. "We share one vessel, your soul and mine. You wanted time. I gave it to you, but time is never free." Vaeloria's stomach heaved. She pressed her palm against her sternum and felt her heartbeat, strong, furious. Beneath it, she sensed something else. A second presence coiled behind her thoughts like a sleeping animal. "Get out," Vaeloria said. Zyraeth's smile was slow. "There is nowhere to go. Hate me later. Live first." The forest around them shifted with quiet movement. Vaeloria caught glints of eyes beyond the firelight. Wolves, she realized, real wolves circling. Zyraeth's presence tightened inside her, a cold pressure down Vaeloria's spine. "Do not run. Predators chase." Vaeloria forced her shaking hands to still. She stared into the trees with as much defiance as she could summon. The nearest wolf stepped into view, black fur glossy, gaze too steady, then paused as if it felt something in the air that made it hesitate. Zyraeth lifted a hand, and Vaeloria felt the world thicken, as if invisible threads snapped tight around them. The wolves backed away, melting into shadow, leaving only silence and Vaeloria's ragged breath. "That was magic," Vaeloria whispered. "Galeweave," Zyraeth corrected, "the seam between living and dead. It belongs to my bloodline, and now it belongs to you." "Necromancy," Vaeloria said, and the word should have sounded ridiculous. But in this air it sounded like truth. "Three powers rule this realm," Zyraeth went on. "The Vyrnathi, who bind with stone and oath. The Thrindle, who carry beast blood and crowns. The Aelthir, who sing storms. My house stood apart, feared, because we touched what others pretend not to fear. Death, now my house is you." Vaeloria swallowed, staring at her hands, at the fire, at the stranger sky. "Why me?" "Because you were willing to let go," Zyraeth said. "Because you chose your own ending, and that stubbornness is a kind of power. I needed someone who would not kneel." Vaeloria's laugh was brittle. "Congratulations, you kidnapped the wrong woman." Zyraeth's voice softened, dangerously intimate. "Or the right one." Morning brought jagged mountains cutting the horizon, peaks crusted with snow. Zyraeth guided her through the Crispine Range, sometimes speaking, sometimes tugging at Vaeloria's attention from inside, as if their shared body came with shared leverage. Vaeloria hated that pull and hated, too, the part of her that found it strangely grounding, like a hand at the small of her back steering her through fog. By midday, they reached a hunting lodge wedged against rock and spruce, old timber and stone, with a carved symbol above the door that made Vaeloria's skin prickle. Noctvillan refuge, Zyraeth said. Clean it. Claim it. Learn to survive before you try to make demands. Inside, dust lay thick. The hearth held dead ash. Shelves sagged under jars of dried herbs. In the back waited a chalked chamber of circles and hooks and stains that made Vaeloria's stomach tighten. Ritual room, she muttered. Do not fear tools, Zyraeth said. Fear ignorance. Vaeloria cleaned because it gave her something to control. She repaired a broken shutter, patched a roof leak with resin, learned to snare rabbits, learned that hunger made her less sentimental and more efficient. Zyraeth taught her plants and poisons, sometimes with brisk practicality, sometimes with a satisfaction that felt personal. This leaf stops fever. This root dulls pain. This tincture will make a man sleep through a dagger at his throat. You say that like you have done it, Vaeloria said. Zyraeth's silence was answer enough. At night, Zyraeth insisted Vaeloria learn wayfarers can't. The realms trade tongue, and she did not teach it gently. She poured meanings into Vaeloria's mind like hot water into cracked glass, and Vaeloria lay shaking on the floor afterward, eyes wet, jaw clenched so hard it ached. You enjoy this, Vaeloria whispered one night, throat raw. I enjoy you fighting me, Zyraeth replied, and the words slid through Vaeloria like a slow touch. There is a difference. Vaeloria hated how her skin warmed with anger and something more shameful. How being pressed against by that presence inside her felt like violation and companionship all at once. Do not, Vaeloria warned, because she could not name what she was warning against. Then do not be so alive, Zyraeth murmured. Weeks passed. Vaeloria found stones half buried near the lodge, and when she touched them the air snapped, faint shimmer threading the trees. Wards, she realized. Old Noctvillan wards that recognized her even though she had not earned them. For the first time, the lodge felt less like exile and more like a fortress she could retreat into. Zyraeth spoke of the Weird Knot, a marriage rite that bound bloodlines with magic and law until even desire became property. I am not marrying anyone, Vaeloria said, flat and certain. Zyraeth paused too long. We will speak when we must. The pause lodged in Vaeloria like a splinter. On the first dawn of true spring, Vaeloria woke from a dream of hands holding her down and metal sliding around her wrist. Her skin tingled where the dream had touched. She sat up, breath fast, and stared at her left wrist. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Relief hit her so hard, she almost laughed. Then cold tightened like a shackle. Metal formed where skin had been, a broad torque of dark hammered silver etched with twisting symbols that seemed to crawl when she blinked. The weight of it felt obscene, intimate, like being gripped. No, Vaeloria breathed. Zyraeth's presence flared inside her with a sharp recoil. That is not a simple mark. Vaeloria's voice went quiet. What is it? A wyrdband torque, Zyraeth said, strained. Vyrnathi craft. It signifies multiple bonds. Multiple, Vaeloria repeated, and the word tasted like bile. She grabbed the torque and pulled. Pain bit instantly, bright enough to make her gasp. The metal did not shift. It simply warmed, as if pleased by her struggle. I will not be owned, Vaeloria hissed. I would rather die. Zyraeth went very still inside her. You already chose death once. This time you will choose strategy. You knew this could happen. I knew the realm would come for you, Zyraeth admitted, and the honesty felt like a knife turned slow. I did not know it would come like this. Vaeloria stared at the torque, at the way it made her young wrist look like property. Who did this? That is the question, Zyraeth said. Someone bound you to Vyrnathi men, or bound them to you. The difference matters, and so does consent. Vaeloria's skin crawled. She remembered the dream voice, soft and possessive, telling her she belonged. How do I break it? Not today, Zyraeth said. First you learn what it means. Then you find the thread. Then you cut it. And until then. Until then, Zyraeth replied, you do not let them see you. They brewed a glamour potion from pale root and ash until the lodge filled with bitter scent. Vaeloria drank, and her skin prickled as if invisible hands pressed years into her face, bent her spine, thinned her hair. When she looked into the mirror, an old woman stared back, sharp-eyed and hunched, the kind of crone people ignored until it was too late. Grotesque, Vaeloria muttered. Survival, Zyraeth corrected. Vaeloria packed dried meat, herbs, a knife, and the mirror, because leaving it behind felt like leaving a throat exposed. She stepped out under the humming wardstones and started down the mountain, old on the outside, furious and young beneath. The lowlands showed her the realm's honesty. Collared women hauling water, girls flinching at raised voices, men laughing too loudly with hands on sword hilts as if cruelty were a privilege. On a main road, she watched a line of shaved-headed prisoners shuffle past, wrists roped together, ankles bleeding. Vaeloria's hands shook with restraint. Do not, Zyraeth warned. Vaeloria swallowed rage like a stone. If I do nothing, I become part of it. If you die for strangers, you become nothing, Zyraeth replied. Choose battles you can win. Later, she found a roadside shrine marked with a sunburst carved into rock. The symbol made Zyraeth's presence tight like a fist. The sanctum of the lumen sun, Zyraeth said. They burn what they cannot name. Vaeloria did not touch the carving again. By the time she reached the main road that fed toward Umbraport, she was tired in a clean way, muscles hardened, lungs stronger than they had been in years. She saw a merchant caravan and angled toward it, leaning into her crone posture, letting her voice rasp. Work, she said, in wayfarers can't. Cooking, mending, herbs. A heavyset merchant snorted. Too old. Too stubborn to die in a ditch. Vaeloria shot back before she could stop herself. A woman with braids and eyes like sharpened green glass stepped closer. Show me your hands. Vaeloria held them out. The glamour made them spotted, veined. The braided woman studied her, then nodded once. Elissanthra, if you lie, I throw you off the wagon. I do not lie, Vaeloria said, I survive. Elissanthra's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Get in. Vaeloria climbed into the back of a supply wagon among sacks of grain. The caravan creaked forward, and for the first time since crossing, she felt the faint comfort of voices, of shared fire, of other bodies in the dark. Comfort came with eyes. A married woman with a thin gold wristband watched Vaeloria too closely at the first camp. Old crone, she called, loud enough to make heads turn. You smell like the woods. What are you hiding? Nothing worth your interest, Vaeloria replied, head lowered. The woman laughed. Everyone hides something. Some hide youth, some hide beauty, some hide trouble that makes men stare. Vaeloria's stomach tightened around the torque under glamour. She turned away before her face betrayed her. That night, while most slept, Vaeloria walked beyond the firelight and heard a weak whimper from the darkness, the sound of pain trying to be quiet. She followed it with her knife in hand and found a pit half covered with brush, its edges sharpened with stakes. At the bottom lay a wolf so pale it looked carved from snow, fur matted with blood. Wooden splinters pierced its flank. Dark staining around the wound spoke of poison. Its eyes lifted to Vaeloria, and awareness stared back, furious and proud even in agony. Thrindle, Zyraeth whispered, alarmed, beast-blooded nobility. The wolf tried to stand, collapsed, teeth bared in warning. Easy, Vaeloria murmured, surprising herself with the softness. Whoever did this wanted you to suffer. Its gaze flicked to her wrist, as if it could see through glamour. It whined, weak and frustrated. Do not, Zyraeth warned. Thrindle bonds drag you into crowns and wars. Vaeloria looked at the stakes, the deliberate cruelty, the poison. Crowns already dragged her. She lowered herself into the pit, mud soaking her knees, and the wolf's growl rose again, a warning with no strength behind it. If you bite me, I will still pull you out, Vaeloria said, voice fierce. I am in no mood to be intimidated by something that is dying. The wolf trembled, then held still as she reached slowly. Vaeloria pressed her hand to its neck, feeling warmth under thick fur and a strong pulse that refused to fade. Something inside Vaeloria tightened, a thread snapping taut. The sensation was intimate, almost shocking. It is bonding, Zyraeth breathed, startled. It is choosing you. Vaeloria's breath caught. She should have pulled away. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered, "Stay with me." The wolf's eyes fluttered. Vaeloria forced its jaws open carefully, ignoring teeth that could have split her hand. She poured a bitter antidote between its teeth and watched it gag, then swallow. She did not know if her herbs were enough, only that doing nothing was unbearable. "Live," she murmured. "Live and prove they failed." For a heartbeat, the wolf went terrifyingly still, and Vaeloria's chest clenched. Then it shuddered, drew a deeper breath, and pressed its head into her palm with a faint, involuntary trust. That small gesture hit Vaeloria harder than the magic ever had. She looped a rope around a nearby root, braced, and hauled. The wolf was heavy, solid with power, even half dead. Mud sucked at her boots. Her shoulders burned. A shadow fell across the pit. Someone stood at the edge. "What are you doing?" a man's voice demanded, low and sharp. Vaeloria looked up into amber eyes. The man was broad-shouldered, dark-haired, holding a spear. He was not pointing it at her. He was pointing it into the woods, as if he expected something to leap. Saving a life, Vaeloria snapped. Either help or go back to sleep. His gaze flicked to the wolf, and his expression tightened with recognition he tried to hide. "That is not a common wolf." "No," Vaeloria said through clenched teeth. "So move." He hesitated only a breath, then dropped to his knees and grabbed the rope. Together they hauled until the wolf's front paws found the edge. It scrabbled, weak but determined, and tumbled onto solid ground, panting. Vaeloria climbed out, hands shaking with exertion. The man stared at the wolf, then at Vaeloria. "Who are you?" "No one," Vaeloria said too quickly. His mouth twitched. "No one does not climb into a trap for a beast that could tear her throat." "Then call me foolish." He leaned closer, as if trying to smell through her glamour. "Brannock," he said, "and you should return to camp before something follows the blood." The wolf lifted its head at the name, making a low sound that was not a growl, not a whine, but something like recognition. Brannock's grip tightened on his spear, jaw flexing as if he fought an impulse to bow. Vaeloria's stomach tightened. "You know him," she realized, "or you know what he is." They brought the wolf back under darkness. Elissanthra woke, took one look, and cursed softly. "Where did you find it?" "In a pit," Vaeloria said, "poisoned." The married woman sat up, eyes widening. "A wolf in camp. Get rid of it. That will bring trouble." The white wolf turned its head toward her slowly. It did not snarl. It simply stared. The woman's husband went pale. The woman swallowed hard and fell silent, as if a hand had closed around her throat. Vaeloria crouched beside the wolf and pulled out splinters from its flank with careful fingers, whispering soothing nonsense because it was easier than admitting she cared. The wolf did not flinch. When her fingertips brushed its fur, a shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with the night air. Brannock watched from across the fire, amber gaze too steady. "You have healer hands for an old crone," he said. "Hands do not age the way faces do," Vaeloria replied, and the answer sounded thin even to her. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he accepted the words but not the truth behind them. That night, the wolf curled beside Vaeloria's wagon, close enough that she could feel its warmth through the boards. Vaeloria lay awake, listening to its breathing, the steady rhythm of a life refusing to end. "You are collecting dangerous allies," Zyraeth murmured inside her. "Or they are collecting me," Vaeloria whispered back. Zyraeth's laugh was low. "Yes, that is the game." Over the next days, the caravan's mood changed. People began to whisper about the white wolf that followed an old crone like a guardian spirit. It limped at first, then grew stronger, its steps smoother, its gaze always tracking Vaeloria. When she rose, it rose. When she walked away from camp, it followed until she told it to stay, and even then it watched her like it could not bear not to. At a midday stop, the married woman tried again, emboldened by gossip. "Old crone," she called, loud and mean, "perhaps you like beasts because men do not look at you." Heat surged under Vaeloria's glamour, humiliation and fury twisting together. She opened her mouth to cut back, to spit a truth sharp enough to draw blood. Before she could, the wolf stepped between them. It did not bear teeth. It simply stood, pale and still, and stared. The air felt thicker, like a pressure settling over the camp. The married woman's voice faltered. "It is just an animal." Elissanthra murmured, almost reverent, "That is not an animal." The woman backed away, suddenly sweating, and could not find another word. Vaeloria reached out and touched the wolf's neck, fingers sinking into soft fur. "Thank you," she whispered. The wolf leaned into her touch as if it had been starving for it. Vaeloria's breath caught, her pulse turning strange and fast. That evening, Elissanthra sat close while they sorted herbs. "You are not what you pretend," she said quietly. Vaeloria did not look up. "Neither are you." Elissanthra's smile was thin. "My father is an aristocrat. He wanted to trade me into a house that would lock me in silk and obedience. I ran." Vaeloria finally met her eyes. The confession was blunt enough to be real. Elissanthra's gaze flicked to the white wolf. "And that one, whoever he is worth more than the entire caravan. People do not poison and stake a creature like that unless they fear what he represents." Vaeloria's stomach tightened. "Who do you think he is?" "I do not know," Elissanthra said, "but I know Thrindle eyes, and I know how men move when they are guarding something precious." Vaeloria remembered Brannoc's stance by the pit, spear angled outward, not at her, as if he expected attackers from the trees. She remembered the way the scarred man and the ash-haired man had watched the wolf with a reverence they tried to hide. Later Vaeloria saw those men again, speaking low with Brannock near the wagons. They fell silent when she approached, eyes flicking over her with sharp assessment that did not match how people looked at harmless old women. "Old Mother," Brannock greeted, too smooth. "I am not anyone's mother," Vaeloria replied, forcing a crooked smile. The scarred man's mouth twitched. "Not yet." Vaeloria's skin prickled under glamour, a warning crawl across her shoulders. Zyraeth's presence inside her was coldly attentive. "Thrindle," Zyraeth whispered, "more than one. They are hiding in plain sight." As the caravan neared Umbraport, the road thickened with travelers. Smoke smudged the horizon. The air tasted faintly of salt. Soldiers marched in small groups, armor stamped with symbols Vaeloria could not read but felt in her bones. On the final night before the city, the white wolf rose abruptly and moved to the edge of camp, ears forward. Vaeloria followed, heart tightening. In the distance, torches bobbed, a line of riders approaching, too orderly to be merchants, too silent to be drunkards. "Riders," Brannock said behind her, voice low. "Are they coming for him?" Vaeloria asked, barely moving her lips. Brannock's jaw flexed. "Perhaps. Or they are coming for you and do not know it yet." The wolf gave a low sound that felt like command rather than fear. The scarred man appeared beside Brannock, and the ash-haired one, moving fast and silent. The scarred man bowed his head toward the wolf, quick enough most would miss it. Vaeloria's breath caught. No, not a bow, not to an animal. The wolf stepped into the open, pale fur gleaming under starlight. It lifted its head and loosed a single howl, long and resonant, a sound that seemed to ripple through ground and bone alike. The riders halted at once, as if the howl had struck them like a wall. From the darkness, a voice called out, strained with disbelief and sudden terror. "High King." Vaeloria's blood went cold and hot at the same time. The white wolf turned its head slightly, and its gaze met Vaeloria's. In that look was a vow, fierce and possessive, as if her hand in his fur had become a binding spell. Vaeloria realized the creature she had dragged from a pit was not just Thrindle nobility. He was a crown that had chosen her. The riders did not come closer once the howl finished. They stopped as if an invisible line had been drawn across the road, and even their horses seemed unwilling to cross it. The torchlight showed helms, cloaks, and a banner stitched with a sunburst that looked too clean, too proud. "The sanctum of the lumen sun," Zyraeth whispered inside Vaeloria, cold with disgust. "They are not here for trade." Brannock moved half a step in front of Vaeloria, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat of him through the night air. "Do not speak. Do not move. Let the High King decide." High King. The title rang in Vaeloria's skull with a weight that made the wyrdband under her glamour pulse, as if it recognized another kind of power. The pale wolf lifted his head again. His gaze stayed on Vaeloria for one impossible breath, as if he tasted her scent in his thoughts. Then he turned toward the riders and took a single step forward. The riders dismounted all at once. One of them, a man with a shaved head and the sunburst carved into his throat like a brand, lifted his torch higher. By decree of the sanctum, the beast called Aeryndor is condemned for heresy and corruption. The wolf crown must be broken. The woman who ensnared him will be purified. Bring her. Vaeloria's skin went ice hot. The woman who ensnared him. I did not, she began, but Zyraeth tightened like a hand on her tongue. Not yet, Zyraeth murmured. Let them show their intent. The pale wolf's shoulders rose and the air changed. It was not a growl, not a howl, but a pressure that made the campfires behind them seem smaller, weaker. The sanctum riders shifted, uneasy. The branded man stared at the wolf, as if staring at blasphemy. You dare hide among merchants. You dare wear a beast skin to mock the sanctum. The wolf's eyes narrowed. Then, to Vaeloria's shock, the wolf stepped closer to the torchlight and simply became a man. No flash of light, no theatrical tearing of flesh, only a shift so smooth the mind struggled to accept it. One moment fur, the next moment skin. He stood tall and bare-chested, pale hair falling loose, eyes like winter sky. Scars crossed his ribs where stakes had pierced him. The poison bruising still shadowed his side, but his posture was royal even in pain. The branded man staggered back. It is not possible. You are bound in beast form. Aeryndor's voice cut the night clean, low and certain. It was not possible until she chose to pull me out of your pit. Vaeloria's breath hitched. He did not look at anyone else when he said it. He looked directly at her as if the rest of the world were noise. The branded man's face twisted. Which? Vaeloria's old crone glamour itched suddenly, as if insult made it want to peel away. She clenched her fists and kept her head down. She forced her voice to rasp and tremble. I am no witch. I am an old woman who saw an animal dying. Aeryndor stepped closer to her, close enough that Vaeloria could smell cold air and pine on his skin. His gaze moved over her hunched shoulders, her lined face, her gray hair, and something in his eyes sharpened as if he saw the lie, but accepted it for her sake. The branded man lifted a hand. Seize her. Brannock moved like a struck match. He did not transform, but power rolled off him anyway, heavy and dark. Try, he said, voice mild in a way that promised violence. The two men who had traveled with him, the scarred one and the ash-haired one, stepped out of the shadows as well. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their stances said trained killers who had been pretending to be ordinary. The sanctum riders hesitated. Aeryndor took one more step forward, and the night seemed to tilt around him. He spoke again, each word carrying the weight of law. By Thrindle right, You have trespassed on my road with intent to execute without trial. By Thrindle right, I claim this camp under my protection until dawn." The branded man shook his head, almost frantic. The sanctum does not answer to beast kings. Aeryndor's mouth curved in something that was not a smile. The sanctum will answer to hunger, to cold, and to the wars it keeps starting. Leave, or do not leave and become a warning. The branded man's torch shook. Vaeloria saw fear there, real and ugly. He spat on the ground and backed away, signaling his riders. They mounted quickly, retreating into the darkness like a mistake fleeing daylight. When the last torch vanished, Vaeloria's knees went weak. She hated that weakness. She hated that the wyrdband had pulsed as if pleased by danger. Aeryndor did not shift back. He stood very still, as if holding himself upright took effort. His hand went briefly to his side, fingers pressing bruised skin. He drew in a slow breath, and Vaeloria realized he was still fighting the poison. "Why could you not shift before?" Vaeloria asked, keeping her voice low. Aeryndor's gaze flicked to the healed punctures on his ribs. They used rowan stakes and sanctified resin. The poison was crafted to trap my mind in the beast. It weakened my will. If I had been alone, I would have stayed a wolf until I died. Vaeloria's throat tightened. She remembered the pit, the helplessness in those intelligent eyes. Who did it? Aeryndor's expression went hard. Someone who wanted my crown empty. Someone who needed me absent long enough for the sanctum to move against my borders. Brannock spoke softly from beside them. And someone who thought the caravan would be an easy place to hide you until it was too late. Aeryndor's eyes slid to him. "You were meant to keep me alive." Brannock's jaw flexed. "I did." "You were also meant to keep her alive," Aeryndor said. Brannock did not deny it. He only glanced at Vaeloria, and his gaze lingered too long on her mouth. Vaeloria's stomach tightened in a way that was not only fear. Even under glamour, she felt watched, appraised, wanted, and it made her angry because she did not know if she wanted it back. "You should rest," Elissanthra called from the firelight. "Or at least stop standing there like statues while the camp trembles." Aeryndor turned toward the wagons, then paused. He faced Vaeloria again. "You smell like old magic." Vaeloria's pulse spiked. She kept her voice rough. "Old women smell like smoke." Aeryndor's gaze deepened, as if amused by her defiance. "You smell like storms and graves." Zyraeth went still inside Vaeloria, attention sharp as a blade. Aeryndor spoke again, quieter. "I owe you my life. I do not forget debts." "Then do not repay it by dragging me into a throne room," Vaeloria snapped. Aeryndor's expression shifted, something almost gentle passing across it. "Too late. The sanctum already named you." Vaeloria lay awake long after the camp slept. The wyrdband pulsed beneath illusion like a second heartbeat. Zyraeth stayed quiet for a long time, which was never a comfort. At last Zyraeth spoke, voice like velvet pulled tight. The sanctum recognized you as a threat quickly. That means someone has been whispering about you in places you have never stepped. How would they even know my name? They do not need your name, Zyraeth replied. They need your scent. Galeweave clings to you. Noctvelin clings to you. And that wyrdband is not subtle to those who know what to look for. Vaeloria swallowed. Then we move faster. You do not choose the pace anymore, Zyraeth said. You choose the direction. By morning, the caravan rolled toward Umbraport, but it rolled differently now, as if the wagons were no longer wagons, but part of a royal procession pretending not to shine. Aeryndor walked in human form beside Vaeloria's wagon, shirt thrown over one shoulder, scars visible without apology. People stared, then looked away as if staring might be punished. Brannock stayed on the other side, close enough that Vaeloria felt flanked, guarded, claimed, and she hated how safe it made her feel. Umbraport rose from the coast like a bruise made of stone, its walls dark, its harbor crowded with ships that looked like knives laid on water. The streets were narrow and wet, smelling of salt, smoke, and old blood. Vaeloria kept her head down, crone posture heavy, but her eyes took in everything. Guards at every corner, women with collars, men with coins. A priest in sunburst robes preaching with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Then the crowd thickened, blocking the main street, drawn toward a square where wood had been stacked into a pyre. Elissanthra hissed, "No, not here." "What is it?" Vaeloria asked. "A burning," Brannock said, voice flat. "A public cleansing." Vaeloria's stomach dropped. She pushed forward, forgetting for a moment to act old. Through the crowd she saw a girl bound to a post, hair loose, face smeared with soot. She looked 16, maybe younger, eyes wide and bright with terror she was trying not to show. A man in sunburst robes lifted his hands. The sanctum purifies corruption. The girl consorted with forbidden blood. The girl broke marriage oath. The girl ran from rightful ownership. Ownership, the word made Vaeloria's wrist throb. The priest lowered his hands. Light the pyre. The first torch moved toward the wood. Vaeloria felt Zyraeth surge inside her like a storm front. "Do not do this." Vaeloria's voice came out low and vicious. "Watch me." She shoved through the crowd, leaning into her crone disguise, letting people recoil from her as if age were contagious. She reached the front as the torch touched the wood. "Stop," she barked. The priest turned, irritated. Who dares interrupt sanctum right? Vaeloria lifted her chin. Under port law, any execution by fire requires a magistrate's seal and a public recitation of charges witnessed by 3 houses. That is the rule in Umbraport. Recite it now, or admit you are only a mob with holy costumes. The priest's eyes narrowed. Old woman, do not play at law. Vaeloria's heart hammered. She was guessing, half improvising, trusting Zyraeth's memories of how cities worked in cruel worlds. She made her voice shake with indignation rather than fear. If you are lawful, prove it. If you are not, the Port Council will fine your sanctum. Or perhaps the Thrindle Crown will. The crowd murmured. Names carried power even when spoken softly. The priest's gaze flicked past Vaeloria and landed on Aeryndor standing at the edge of the square, still and cold as winter. The priest's face drained. Aeryndor spoke, voice calm, carrying effortlessly. Produce the seal. The priest swallowed. This is a sanctum matter. Aeryndor took one slow step forward. This is a public square under port law. Produce the seal. The priest's hands trembled. He did not have it. Vaeloria felt the torch-bearer hesitate, unsure which authority would break his bones first. Then Brannock's voice cut in, quiet and dangerous. The girl is alive until the seal appears. The priest's jaw clenched. She is a runaway wife. Property she stole herself. The crowd made a sound, half hunger, half fear. Vaeloria's chest tightened so hard it hurt. She saw the girl's eyes flicker toward Vaeloria, a silent plea. Vaeloria stepped closer to the post and looked up at the girl. Can you speak? The girl's mouth opened, then closed. Her throat worked. He took my tongue once, she rasped. Not all of it. Enough. Vaeloria's stomach twisted. Who? The girl's gaze flicked toward the priest, toward a cluster of well-dressed men watching from the edge with smiles too controlled. I ran, the girl whispered. I ran because if I stayed, I would die slower. Vaeloria turned back to the priest. Under port law, any claim of ownership must be presented in writing. Show the bond mark. Show the contract. Show anything other than your appetite. The priest's face tightened. She is Vyrnathi bound. The proof is on her wrist. Look. He reached for the girl's arm, and Vaeloria reacted without thinking. She slapped his hand away. The crack of skin on skin rang louder than the crowd. Silence fell like a blade. Zyraeth's voice hissed inside her, furious and thrilled. You just declared yourself her protector. The priest's eyes went wide with outrage. You struck a sanctum cleric. Vaeloria stared him down. Then arrest me, in public, under port law, with witnesses, with a seal. Aeryndor moved closer, and the crowd parted as if he carried a knife to their throats. He spoke softly, and it felt like the entire square leaned in. Untie her. The priest looked like he might scream. You cannot. Aeryndor's gaze iced over. Try me. No one moved. No one wanted to be the one who disobeyed. A guard stepped forward, hands shaking, and began to cut the rope. The girl sagged as soon as she was free. Vaeloria caught her before she hit the ground, surprised by how light she was. Under the soot and fear, she smelled like smoke and salt, and something faintly sweet, like a flower crushed between pages. The priest spat toward Vaeloria's feet. "You have made an enemy of the sanctum." Vaeloria's voice was low. "I already had enemies. I just stopped pretending otherwise." They moved fast after that. Elissanthra guided them through alleys to a rented room above a fishmonger, the kind of place where the floor always felt damp and the walls listened. Aeryndor paid without haggling. Brannock stood at the door like a wall. The rescued girl sat on the bed, arms wrapped around herself. Up close, she looked older than she had in the square, eyes too tired for her face. "What is your name?" Vaeloria asked gently. "Mirhiel," the girl whispered, "but he called me Little Ash." "Who?" Mirhiel's gaze flicked to Vaeloria's wrist as if she could see through glamour too. "Vyrnathi, Cerulith Coil, House Viridthorn." Zyraeth's voice sharpened. "Varrock." Vaeloria stiffened. "You know that name." "Yes," Zyraeth said. "He is a knife in a silk sleeve. If he marked her, he will want her returned. Not because he cares, because she knows something." Mirhiel swallowed. "I heard things behind walls. I saw women taken into rooms and returned quiet. I saw poison poured into cups meant for rivals. I ran before he decided I was too dangerous to keep breathing." Vaeloria's fingers tightened on her own knee. The wyrdband throbbed, as if recognizing a path opening. Brannock spoke from the door. "You saved her. Now the city will talk. The sanctum will talk." Aeryndor's voice came calm from the corner where he leaned against the wall, looking too large for the small room. "Let them talk. Talking is slower than knives." Vaeloria turned toward him. "You cannot keep walking beside me. You are a beacon." Aeryndor's gaze held hers. "So are you." Vaeloria's throat tightened. Under her crone disguise, she felt suddenly young and exposed. She forced her voice to stay hard. "I want no throne. I want my life." Aeryndor pushed away from the wall and took one step closer. "The sanctum does not care what you want. The Vyrnathi wyrdband on your wrist is a claim. Someone forged it with power strong enough to bind multiple men. That is not a petty marriage trick. That is a political weapon." Vaeloria's pulse spiked. "How do you know about it?" Aeryndor's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because I can smell oath magic. Because when you touched my fur, my bond sense woke like a wound reopening. Because you are wrapped in illusion and still your fate screams." Brannock's jaw flexed. "He knows." Elissanthra muttered, half to herself, "Everyone knows but the city." Vaeloria's stomach dropped. She forced herself to breathe. "Fine, then tell me this. Who am I supposedly bound to?" Aeryndor's expression hardened. 3 Vyrnathi, brothers by blood or oath, Revan of the Cerulith line, and twins Selithar and Gerwin. Their names are whispered because they are competent and inconvenient, and because none of them are men who would consent to being bound without negotiation. Vaeloria stared. You are telling me I am married to 3 men I have never met. Mirhiel's voice was small. They are not like Varrock. They are not cruel. But they are Vyrnathi, and Vyrnathi law will still treat you like a prize unless you make them treat you like a person. Zyraeth whispered inside Vaeloria, sharp with uneasy admiration. Hear her. She survived. She learned which monsters were merely raised wrong and which monsters chose it. Vaeloria's stomach turned. I did not cross worlds to become a political hostage. Aeryndor's gaze softened just enough to be more dangerous. Then, become the problem no one planned for. Brannock's voice came rough. You already are. The words landed too close to truth. Vaeloria looked at Brannock. Something about him felt like a locked door that wanted her to try the handle. His eyes were steady, and there was jealousy there, and anger, and something that pulled at her chest like gravity. Zyraeth's voice murmured, almost amused. He smells you through the glamour. He is already half bonded. Vaeloria's face heated. Stop. You cannot stop hunger by denying it, Zyraeth replied. That night danger came in a quieter form. A knock at the door, soft and polite. Brannock's hand went to his weapon. No one moves. Another knock. A woman's voice, calm, Aeryndor, I know you are there. Aeryndor's posture changed instantly, the air around him tightening. His eyes went cold. Open the door. Brannock did not. Who are you? The woman's voice stayed calm. Someone who will keep this building from burning in the next hour. Open. Aeryndor looked at Vaeloria. If she speaks my true name in the hall, the city will riot. Brannock opened the door a crack. A woman stood there in a plain cloak, hood down, face unremarkable until her eyes met Vaeloria's. Then Vaeloria felt a strange jolt, like being measured by someone who had already decided your worth. Kyrethia, Mirhiel whispered, startled. What are you doing here? The woman's gaze flicked to Mirhiel. Alive. Good. Then to Vaeloria. You are the one with the wyrdband. Vaeloria's throat tightened. Who are you? Kyrethia stepped into the room without waiting for permission. Kyrethia Imbervine. Sister to one of the men you are bound to. Vaeloria's blood went cold. Aeryndor shifted subtly, protective. You walked into Umbraport alone. Kyrethia's mouth twitched, humorless. I am not alone. I am just the one you can see. Elisanthra's eyes narrowed. That is a threat. Kyrethia's gaze stayed on Vaeloria. It is a warning. Varrock has sanctum allies. He has paid for your scent. He believes you are a weapon he can aim. He also believes you are a woman, and that means you can be managed. That is his first mistake. Vaeloria felt the wyrdband pulse hard, like it approved of the word mistake. Kyrethia continued, voice steady. My brothers did not consent to the binding. They woke with marks they did not choose. They are furious, but they are not cruel. If you come to Cyrolith Coil under our protection, you have a chance to turn this from a cage into leverage." Vaeloria's heart hammered. Why would you help me? Kyrethia's eyes flickered, and in that flicker, Vaeloria saw hurt. "Because I am tired of watching women become currency in my city. Because if Varrock wins, he will tighten every chain he can reach. And because my brothers are good men trapped in a bad system. If you are the one fated to disrupt it, I would rather stand beside you than under it." Zyraeth's voice was quiet, almost wary. She speaks like someone who has already lost things. Vaeloria stared at Kyrethia, trying to find the lie. Instead, she found only determination. Aeryndor spoke, voice calm. "The sanctum will follow." Kyrethia nodded. "Yes, and Varrock will follow with blades that do not wear holy robes. Leave at dawn, quietly." Brannock's jaw flexed. And what of her? He looked at Vaeloria as he said it, as if the question cut him too. Kyrethia's gaze slid to Brannock. "You will come too, if you intend to keep breathing. If you are who I think you are, the Vyrnathi will not tolerate you near her without terms." Brannock's eyes flashed. "Terms can choke." Aeryndor's voice went colder. "Then do not choke. Learn to negotiate." Vaeloria's head swam. She wanted to scream. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to take her body and run into the sea and let salt erase her fate. Instead, she looked at Mirhiel, who sat very still, hands wrapped around herself as if holding her soul in place. "You ran from them," Vaeloria said softly. "If I go to Cyrolith Coil, am I walking into the same thing?" Mirhiel swallowed. "It depends on which men catch you first." At dawn they left Umbraport through back streets, cloaks drawn, wagons abandoned. Aeryndor shifted to wolf form outside the city walls, not because he had to, but because it was faster. And because the sight of a white wolf at the front of their group made bandits hesitate in the distance. They traveled hard. Kyrethia knew hidden paths, inns that asked fewer questions, bridges with guards who looked away when she slipped them a small token. On the third night, as they rested in a pine hollow, Vaeloria woke to Brannock sitting near her bedroll, not touching her, but close enough that his heat reached her. "You should sleep," she whispered. His gaze stayed on her face, too focused. "You are not an old woman." Vaeloria's throat tightened. The glamour had held for weeks, but exhaustion and stress had begun to thin it. She felt it sometimes, a looseness at the edges, as if her true self pressed against the illusion like a bird against a cage. "No," she admitted, voice barely there. Brannock's jaw flexed. "I knew, I smelled it. I tried not to care." Vaeloria's pulse spiked. "Then why do you sit here like you own the night?" "Because I cannot stop watching you," he said, and the honesty landed like a hand on her throat. "Because when you pulled him from that pit, something snapped in me too." Zyraeth stirred inside Vaeloria, watching with a quiet intensity that felt indecent. Vaeloria forced herself to keep her voice steady. You do not know me. Brannock leaned closer, and Vaeloria's body reacted with a heat that made her furious with herself. I know your anger. I know your refusal to kneel. I know the way your hands shake when you want to kill someone and decide not to. Vaeloria swallowed. You are Thryndall. His mouth twisted. Flintclaw, bare blood, not a king, not a priest, just a man who knows what it is to be used as muscle by those who wear crowns. Aeryndor's wolf form lay a short distance away, ears flicking, as if listening without pretending not to. Vaeloria felt suddenly trapped between predators who wanted to protect her and predators who might claim her. Brannock's gaze dropped to her mouth. I will not touch you unless you ask, but I need you to understand this. If Vyrnathi men think they can pull you into a stone burrow and lock the door, I will tear the door down. Vaeloria's voice came out rough. That is not romantic. That is war. Brannock's expression softened just enough to hurt. Romance is a story people tell when they want to forget war exists. He sat back, forcing space between them. Sleep, he murmured. Tomorrow you will need your teeth. Vaeloria lay there after he moved away, staring at the stars, feeling Zyraeth's quiet presence like a second skin. You like him, Zyraeth said. Vaeloria's throat tightened. Do not. Zyraeth's voice was almost gentle. Wanting does not make you weak. It makes you dangerous because it gives enemies a place to aim. Vaeloria's wrist throbbed, as if on cue. When Cerulith Coil finally appeared, it did not look like a city. It looked like a wound in the earth, stone carved into spiraling terraces, dwellings burrowed into cliff faces, bridges arcing over chasms. Smoke rose from vents like breath. Everything smelled of minerals and heat. People moved with a coiled grace, and their eyes were sharp. The Vyrnathi. They entered under Kyrethia's escort. Guards watched them pass, some curious, some hostile. Vaeloria kept her crone glamour on, but it felt thin now, stretched to breaking. At the central terrace, 3 men waited. Vaeloria saw them first as silhouettes against torchlight, then as faces as they stepped forward. All 3 bore the same dark mark at their wrists, faintly glowing, matching the cold ache under Vaeloria's illusion. The tallest had calm eyes and hands that looked used to tending wounds. Revan, Kyrethia said quietly, and Vaeloria heard warmth in her voice. Beside him stood twins, nearly identical, one with a scar at his lip, the other with an earring shaped like a spiral of stone. Selithar and Gerwin. The sight of them made Vaeloria's stomach twist, not with desire, but with the strange shock of fate becoming visible. Revan stepped closer, gaze steady. Whoever you are under that glamour, you are not our enemy. Vaeloria's voice came out sharp. That is convenient. Gerwin's mouth curved faintly. We woke with marks and no memory of agreeing to them. We were furious. we still are. Selithar's eyes narrowed. We came to demand answers from the council. Then our sister sent word that you were hunted by the sanctum. That changed the urgency. Vaeloria's throat tightened. You did not consent. Revan shook his head. No, and if you did not either, then someone violated all of us. The words hit Vaeloria like a cold wave. For the first time since the wyrdband appeared, she felt something loosen in her chest. Not safety, not trust, but a shared rage that did not isolate her. Zyraeth's presence went still, as if listening for a crack in the world. Vaeloria's voice lowered. I did not consent. I woke with this on my wrist like a shackle. I ran because I would not be owned. Revan's gaze softened, and it made Vaeloria uncomfortable because gentleness felt like a trap. Then we will not treat you like property. But understand this. The mark ties us. If you die, it may tear part of us with you. If we die, it may tear part of you. That is how strong binding works. Aeryndor shifted, human again, stepping forward like a blade. Then you will help her break it. Selithar's gaze flicked to Aeryndor with respect and tension. The council will not love that request. Gerwin's eyes narrowed at Brannock, and they will hate him standing this close. Brannock's voice went low. Hate is a small problem. Kyrethia stepped between them, exhaling. Enough. Varrock moves. The sanctum moves. This is not the hour for posturing. Vaeloria's glamour flickered suddenly, as if her body were tired of pretending. Heat rushed through her skin. The crone mask thinned at her cheeks, her jawline sharpening, hair darkening at the roots. Revan's eyes widened. Oh. Selithar inhaled sharply. You are young. Vaeloria's anger flared. This body is not mine, not entirely. Do not stare like you are owed anything. Gerwin's gaze dropped quickly, a rare sign of restraint. Forgive it, it is just. You do not look like what we expected. We expected a weapon, a priestess, a monster. Vaeloria's voice turned cold. You got a woman who refuses to die quietly. Revan's expression steadied. Good, we need that. They moved her into a dwelling carved into stone, more burrow than house, but clean and warm, with a hearth that breathed heat from the earth. Elissanthra and Mirhiel were given rooms nearby. Aeryndor prowled the terrace edges like a wolf, pretending to be human. Brannock stayed close enough to irritate every guard in the city. That night Revan came alone, bringing a bowl of bitter tea and a small packet of herbs. He placed them down gently, as if offering rather than commanding. Drink, he said. It will settle the tremor in your pulse. You have been running on rage. Vaeloria eyed him. Are you trying to drug me? Revan's mouth curved faintly. If I wanted you unconscious, I would use a different herb. This one simply keeps your body from collapsing when your mind refuses rest. Vaeloria hesitated, then drank. The tea tasted like bark and smoke, but warmth spread through her limbs. Revan watched her, not hungry, not possessive, simply attentive, and that made Vaeloria's guard slip in a way she did not like. "Tell me the truth," Vaeloria said. "Why are you being gentle?" Revan's gaze held hers. "Because if someone bound me against my will, I would want someone to approach me like a person, not a prize. Because my sister asked me to. And because your fear is not weakness. It is evidence you have survived things that should have broken you." Vaeloria's throat tightened unexpectedly. She turned her face slightly away, as if refusing him the satisfaction of seeing emotion. Zyraeth's voice murmured, careful. "He is not lying." Vaeloria's jaw clenched. "You would know. You live in my skull." Revan's eyes flicked, as if he sensed something unsaid. He leaned forward slightly. "There is another presence in you." Vaeloria froze. Revan continued softly. "I am a healer. I can feel when a body is crowded. Are you cursed?" Vaeloria's hand tightened around the bowl. Something like panic rose. If the wrong people heard about Zyraeth, they would call Vaeloria corrupted, possessed, a convenient excuse for burning. Zyraeth's voice whispered, sharp, "Do not reveal me yet." Vaeloria swallowed. "I am complicated." Revan nodded as if that was enough for now. "Then we move carefully." He stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. "One more thing. The council will demand to see the wyrdband. They will demand to test your claim. I advise you to let them. Not because you owe them, but because if you hide, Varrock will control the narrative." Vaeloria's wrist throbbed under fading glamour. "And what if the council decides I am dangerous?" Revan's gaze sharpened. "Then we remind them that the sanctum is marching and Varrock is poisoning our city. They can either treat you as ally or lose the chance to survive." He left. Vaeloria sat alone, listening to the hearth's low breath, feeling the first strange outline of a plan form in her chest. 2 days later, the council chamber filled with stone lords and sharp-eyed women in carved jewelry. Vaeloria stood in the center, flanked by Kyrethia, guarded by Aeryndor and Brannock, watched by Revan and the twins. A councilman with a beard braided in metal spoke first. "Remove the glamour." Vaeloria let it fall. The crone illusion peeled away like old skin, leaving her true face, young, fierce, eyes too awake. The chamber stirred with murmurs. Another councilwoman leaned forward. "The wyrdband." Vaeloria held out her wrist. The torque gleamed darkly under torchlight, etched symbols crawling like living script. The sight of it made several council members flinch. The first councilman's voice tightened. "A multiple binding. Who forged it?" Vaeloria's voice was clear. "I do not know. I did not consent. Your men did not consent. Whoever did this violated all of us and intended to use the bond to control us." A murmur rose. agreement, disbelief, fear. Then a voice from the back, oily and amused. Or perhaps she lies because she knows she is guilty. A man stepped forward from shadow, dressed too finely, smile too smooth. Lord Varrock. Mirhiel's breath caught beside Elissanthra, a small broken sound. Vaeloria's stomach went cold. How did he get here? Zyraeth's voice whispered, grim, because he belongs here. Because he is the kind of rot that grows inside stone. Varrock bowed slightly to the council. The sanctum reports a witch disrupting their rites. The Thrindle king reports his life was saved by an unknown woman with grave magic. And now, this woman stands here wearing a wyrdband like a crown and claims innocence. How convenient. Vaeloria's pulse hammered. Then she forced her voice calm. If you believe the sanctum, you have already surrendered your city to fanatics. If you believe me, you might survive. Varrock's smile widened. Bold, I admire it. But your existence is destabilizing. You incite beasts and wives and runaways. You make women believe they can refuse. Vaeloria's voice went low. Women can refuse. That is not incitement. That is truth. Varrock's gaze flicked to Revan and the twins. You see, she speaks like a ruler. Then he lifted his hand, and something dark flashed in his palm. A shard of black stone that pulsed like a heart. The chamber lights flickered. The air thickened. Vaeloria felt Zyraeth surge inside her, sudden and furious. He is using Noctvillain craft, Zyraeth hissed. How? Varrock spoke softly, like a lover offering poison. The sanctum wants her burned. The council wants her controlled. I offer a compromise. Give her to me. I will contain her, and the Beast King will have no excuse to meddle in our affairs. Kyrethia's voice snapped. You will do no such thing. Varrock's smile did not change. Sister of Cyrulith, you forget your place. Brannock's growl vibrated through the chamber, deep and dangerous. Aeryndor stepped forward, voice cutting. You forget mine. Varrock's gaze slid to Aeryndor with a hint of dislike. High King, how noble of you to interfere in Vyrnathi politics. Perhaps you should return to your forests before the sanctum decides your fur looks lovely on an altar. Aeryndor's eyes iced over. Vaeloria felt the room tipping toward chaos, toward violence that would spill into streets and make the sanctum's job easier. She inhaled slowly and reached for Galeweave the way Zyraeth had taught her, not as a dramatic spell, but as a thread she could pull. Her voice dropped into something deeper, carrying without strain. Enough. The word was not a shout. It was an utterance that vibrated through bone. The chamber went silent as if the walls themselves obeyed. Vaeloria felt the power surge and almost choke her. Zyraeth steadied it from inside, guiding the current so it did not burn Vaeloria's throat. Varrock's smile faltered. Vaeloria stepped toward him. You used a shard of Noctvillain craft. That means you have been digging in graves you do not understand. That means you forged a wyrdband you could not fully control and hoped to steer it with fear. Varrock's gaze sharpened. You assume much. Vaeloria's lips curved without humor. I am a woman who survived dying once. Assume I am not as naive as you want. Then she turned to the council. If you hand me to him, you hand yourselves to him. If he can forge oath bonds without consent, he can forge them on you, on your sons, on your daughters. The council murmured, shifting, fear turning toward Varrock now. Varrock's eyes narrowed. Careful, you are close to accusing a lord without proof. Mirhiel stepped forward suddenly, hands shaking, eyes bright. I am the proof. The chamber stilled. Mirhiel lifted her wrist, showing a faint scar where a mark had once been burned into her skin. Varrock married me with blood and pain. He kept women in back rooms. He poisoned rivals. He met with sanctum priests at night. Varrock's face went still. Kyrethia moved instantly to Mirhiel's side, hand steady at her back. Varrock spoke softly, dangerous. Little Ash, you should have died in Umbraport. Mirhiel's voice shook, but she did not fold. I did not, and you cannot silence me now. Varrock's hand tightened around the black shard. Then he smiled again. Very well. If you want proof, you will have spectacle. He slammed the shard onto the stone floor. Darkness burst upward, not like smoke, but like a hole opening. The chamber temperature dropped. The torches sputtered. Vaeloria felt Galeweave twist, corrupted, pulled toward the shard like iron to a magnet. Zyraeth surged inside her, furious. He is tearing at the seam. Vaeloria's breath hitched. She reached for the warding instincts Zyraeth had drilled into her, for the memory of Noctvalen's stones humming. She spread her fingers and spoke without thinking, words not of wayfarers' cant, but older, harsher. A ring of faint light flared around the shard, a boundary drawn in air. Varrock's eyes widened. Impossible. Vaeloria's voice came out steady, cold. Not impossible, just inconvenient for you. The darkness snarled against her boundary. Vaeloria's arms shook. Zyraeth braced from within, pushing power into Vaeloria's bones. Vaeloria tasted blood where her teeth cut her lip. Riven moved to her side. He placed his hand on her shoulder, not restraining, only anchoring. Breathe. Let it flow through you, not against you. The simple contact shocked Vaeloria with warmth, with the intimate reality of being held steady. The wyrdband pulsed, and for one breath it felt less like a shackle and more like a bridge. The twins stepped in too, palms open, channeling Vyrnathi stone craft into the floor, stabilizing the chamber. Aeryndor's voice rumbled half-wolf, break him. Brannock's voice came lower, gladly. But Vaeloria saw the trap. If they attacked Varrock with claws and fists, he would spin it into proof that she brought beasts to overthrow the council. The sanctum would love it. Vaeloria forced her voice to carry again. Guards, seize him for black craft and unlawful binding. The councilman with the metal-braided beard hesitated only a second, then nodded sharply. Seize him. Guards moved. Varrock tried to pull the shard up again, but the boundary held. He snarled, real fury breaking through his smooth mask. This is not over, he hissed at Vaeloria. That wyrdband will drag you into the ground. Your husbands will break you. Your beast will devour you. Your ghost will hollow you. Vaeloria leaned closer, voice low enough that only he could hear. Then I will make sure I take you down with me. Varrock's eyes flashed. Then he was hauled away, cursing in a voice that sounded too much like prayer. When the chamber finally settled, Vaeloria's knees almost buckled. The boundary around the shard flickered, then died as the shard was sealed in iron by council mages. The councilwoman who had demanded the wyrdband stared at Vaeloria with something like reluctant respect. You are not what we feared. Vaeloria's throat was raw. I am exactly what you should fear if you plan to chain me. Aeryndor's hand brushed Vaeloria's back, brief and steadying. She heard him murmur close, almost tender. Good. Brannock's gaze burned from the side, jealousy sharp, but he did not intervene. Revan exhaled slowly. You just saved a city from tearing itself open. Vaeloria shook her head. I only stopped one man from turning it into a weapon. Zyraeth's voice was quiet, unusually so. You did what Noctvilin was meant to do. You made monsters hesitate. That night in the stone dwelling, Vaeloria finally let herself wash the blood taste from her mouth. The bathhouse was carved from warm rock, steam rising in soft clouds. Elissanthra sat with her hair piled high, eyes exhausted. Mirhiel soaked silently, shoulders slowly unclenching as if her body was learning safety again. Vaeloria slipped into the water and felt warmth spread through her muscles. For the first time since crossing worlds, she let her eyes close. Then she felt someone enter. She opened her eyes sharply. Revan stood at the doorway, hesitating, clearly unsure if he was welcome. His gaze stayed respectfully on the floor, not on skin. I brought ointment for your lip. You were bleeding. Vaeloria's throat tightened. She hated how care could soften her anger. Leave it. Revan set the small jar down and turned to go, then paused. He did not look at her. I know you hate this bond. I would too. But I will not use it to hurt you. If you ever feel unsafe here, you come to me. Vaeloria's voice came out unexpectedly quiet. Why? Revan's answer was simple. Because I see how hard you fight to stay yourself. And he left. Vaeloria stared at the steam for a long time. Elissanthra watched her with a knowing look that Vaeloria refused to interpret. Later, back in her room, Vaeloria found Brannock waiting by the hearth like a restless animal. He stood as soon as she entered, eyes taking her in as if memorizing proof she was real. "You should not be here," Vaeloria said, though her voice lacked conviction. He moved closer, stopping a careful distance away. "You stood in front of a council and made them obey you with one word, and you still tremble when you are alone. That makes me angry." Vaeloria's jaw tightened. "Do not try to understand me like you have earned the right." Brannock's voice roughened. "I am trying to decide what to do with the need in my chest." Vaeloria's pulse spiked. Need. Brannock nodded once, grim. "I smell your fear. I smell your rage. I smell the other thing you pretend is not there when you look at me." Zyraeth stirred inside Vaeloria, watchful. Vaeloria forced her voice steady. "If you touch me because you think I am yours, I will break you." Brannock's mouth twisted, and something like admiration flashed. "Good. I do not want a woman who cannot threaten me." He stepped closer, close enough now that Vaeloria felt the warmth of him, the weight of his attention. He did not touch. He waited. Vaeloria's body hummed with tension. She could smell him too, pine and smoke, and something animal underneath. She remembered his vow. "I will not touch you unless you ask." Her throat tightened. "Then do not make me ask." Brannock's eyes darkened. "That is cruelty." Vaeloria's voice went low. "I have lived with cruelty. I am learning to use it on my own terms." Brannock exhaled, slow. "Then I will give you one honest thing and leave before I do something stupid." He leaned in slightly, so close his breath warmed her cheek, but he still did not touch. "When you are ready, if you ever are, I will be yours by choice, not because of marks." Vaeloria's breath caught. The words slid under her skin like heat. Brannock stepped back as if forcing himself. "Sleep. Tomorrow will be worse." He left. Vaeloria stood alone, heart hammering, feeling Zyraeth's presence shift with a strange tenderness. "You want him," Zyraeth murmured. Vaeloria's throat tightened. "I want control." Zyraeth's voice softened. "Then take it, but remember this. Control is not the same as isolation." In the days that followed, the city did not become safe, but it became navigable. Varrock's arrest cracked the illusion of his untouchability. The sanctum grew bolder, preaching outside terraces, stirring fear, but their influence met resistance now that Vaeloria's presence had made the council taste what it meant to be threatened from within. Vaeloria worked with Kyrethia and the brothers to investigate the poisonings Mirhiel had spoken of. Riven moved through infirmaries, reading symptoms like text. The twins tracked shipments and bribes with sharp efficiency. Elissanthra became a bridge to common women in the terraces, teaching them herbs that could dull pain and sharpen focus, giving them tiny pieces of autonomy. Aeryndor sent messengers north to stabilize his borders and quietly tightened patrols against sanctum raiders. Brannock trained guards, drilled them hard, made them curse him and thank him in the same breath. Vaeloria found herself at the center of it, not because she asked to be, but because fate was a rope, and she had decided to pull instead of be dragged. One evening, as the sun bled orange across stone, Vaeloria stood on a terrace alone, staring down into the spiraling city. The wyrdband on her wrist no longer felt like a surprise. It felt like an enemy she understood well enough to plan against. Zyraeth spoke quietly. "You have stepped into the wider world. You did not shatter. You did not kneel." Vaeloria's voice was low. "You sound proud." Zyraeth's presence shifted, a sigh inside Vaeloria's ribs. "I am, and it terrifies me. Pride makes you vulnerable to loss." Vaeloria swallowed. "Tell me the truth. Did you cause the wyrdband? Did you bind me to them?" Zyraeth went still. The silence stretched so long Vaeloria's throat tightened. Then Zyraeth answered carefully. "I did not forge it, but I suspected the realm might try to bind you when you arrived. I chose a place and time where you would land near the threads of power, because if you had landed among peasants, you would be dead already." Vaeloria's chest tightened. "So you used me." Zyraeth's voice was quiet, and for the first time it carried something like regret. "Yes, and I gave you what you begged your world for: time, breath, a body that does not betray you." Vaeloria's eyes burned. "That does not excuse it." "No," Zyraeth said, "it only explains it." Vaeloria stared at her wrist. The torque gleamed, indifferent. Then she exhaled slowly. "I am still alive. That means I still get to choose what I become." Zyraeth's voice softened. "That is why I chose you." Footsteps approached. Kyrethia came to stand beside her, gaze on the city. The council voted. Varrock will be held for trial. The sanctum is furious. They will not stop, but the city is awake now. Vaeloria's mouth tightened. Awake people get killed. Kyrethia nodded. "Yes, that is why you must not disappear, even if you want to. Symbols are dangerous, but they are also shields." Vaeloria's voice went low. "I never wanted to be anyone's symbol." Kyrethia's gaze slid to her. "None of us want what we become. We take what we are given and decide what to do with it." Vaeloria turned back toward the terrace edge. Below, women walked with baskets, heads lifted a little higher than before. It was not freedom, it was not justice, but it was movement. Behind Vaeloria, she felt presences gathering, as if drawn by the same gravity. Revan's calm warmth. The twins' sharp attention. Aeryndor's quiet, protective power. Brannock's restless heat. Elisanthra's fierce loyalty. Mirhiel's fragile courage. The collection of them should have felt like a cage. Instead, for one breath, it felt like a circle. Vaeloria looked down at the city again and let herself believe something she had not dared believe since the doctor's office. That she might build a life here that was not only survival, that she might turn a binding into a bargain and then into something chosen. She touched the wyrdband lightly, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "I will not be owned," she whispered, "but I will belong where I decide to belong." Inside her, Zyraeth's presence eased, like a hand unclenching. Then choose, and do not apologize for the cost. That night, the city's stone held warmth, and the hearth in Vaeloria's dwelling breathed steady heat. Outside, distant voices carried, arguments and prayers and laughter braided together into the messy sound of people still alive. Vaeloria lay down, and for the first time in this realm, slept without dreaming of burning. What did you think of Vaeloria's story? Did her determination not to give up, even in the face of death, earn your respect? Write in the comments, what would you have done in her place if given such a second chance? Would you have accepted the dark magic or resigned yourself to fate? And please, give me some feedback on the voice acting. Did I manage to convey the cold atmosphere of this world and the tension between the characters? Is this reading speed comfortable for you, or should I read a bit slower?